Welcome to Sanity, a podcast by the New York Sun. My name is A.R. Hoffman, and every week, along with my co-host Rebecca Sugar, we try to make sense out of the nonsense and bring a little bit of sanity and maybe a little bit of warmth this week to your week.
Yeah, burr. Ari, the quote of the week comes from West Chicago Mayor Daniel Bovee, who, if you saw the story, there was a teacher at the elementary school there who posted on his social media the words "Go ICE," and a community uproar ensued, and now they're calling for his head, and there are going to be protests, and people are yanking their kids out of school on Monday, and all that. He's on paid administrative leave as we speak, this teacher. And this is what Mayor Daniel Bovee took to social media to say to the people of his community. Quote, "Some people have asked, don't teachers have First Amendment rights? Can't they have political opinions? And yes, of course they can. Teachers can have political opinions. They can express their political opinions in appropriate ways. What makes this different is this. The school district, the school where this happened, we have multiple students who have lost their mom or dad in the last few months in these ICE raids. We have students who go home fearful every night, wondering if their mom or dad is going to be there. We have kids having panic attacks." And he went on to sort of explain how this is the exception because of the climate and because ICE are terrible and the Gestapo and all that. And I just wanted to pull that quote to remind everybody that this is where this is where free speech starts to die, when people in sort of dulcet tones and out of empathy kind of curtail the constitutionally guarded free speech rights of an American citizen to protect the feelings of illegal immigrants. The insanity of that should be clear to everyone, and if it isn't, I hope they'll take a second look at this. And you know, this was how the Biden administration operated, and I thought we voted our way out of this, but here we are again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd love if teachers express no political opinions. I think I wouldn't want a teacher
in the classroom
posting,
or in the school. This was on his own social media.
Yeah. What if a teacher was posting about Jews and genocide and all that? I wouldn't want that either.
And right? They'll get fired.
Yeah, I just think it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Yeah, I don't know. We also, I don't know if we'll get to it, but have you seen some of these things on the new TikTok where like you can't say Epstein or like all this?
We're getting to that in my sunlight.
Okay, we're getting there. Okay.
I feel like we're not going to agree, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So our big story is, I think, Minnesota again. We'll dive deep into that. Another very, very newsy week that's still unfolding as we speak. Events moving very quickly there. We're also, I think, going to spend some time updating you on the latest with Iran and some developments there. Also, I think a fast-moving story, a story that felt like maybe, okay, we were settled, and then in the last day or so, it feels like things are really heating up.
Yeah.
And then we'll take a look at, here in New York in our Make It Make Sense section about our new mayor. We've had a snowstorm this week and lots of I think ways to get into the current weather and political climate.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we start off with Minnesota? I'll start off, and I want to say I think I told you so. Last week we sat here and I said, you have to obey the law. You have to protect constitutional rights. Things seem out of control. It's okay to say I support enforcement, but not, sort of some of these more aggressive. And I think that was kind of vindicated, not to sound like an idiot. But
I was going to say I told you so to you.
No. Well,
so tell me how.
This is a good debate.
Why?
Well, I mean, it just feels like ICE was operating totally out of control, and I think the administration has recognized that. They fired the head of ICE in Minnesota, Bavino. Tom Homan is now taking over. Trump even has said, I'm not really sure what was going on there, and has reached out to Waltz. And we've had a second, video of someone killed, American citizen killed on the streets of Minnesota. So I hope the administration is rethinking the approach, rethinking the strategy, because I don't think the American people want this. I really don't.
Oh boy, where to start? Okay, well, I think the opposite. I think that Walz, 24 hours after it was posted all over social media that that Signal administrators who were organizing these very targeted attacks against ICE and law enforcement, they were found out to be part of the administration or tied to the administration. That's interestingly when he decided to have a phone call with Trump. So I think, to me, the capitulation was on Walz's side, not on Trump's side. And I think, I think that video, look, here's what I really think, because I hate getting caught up in all the little details. Everyone became a forensic expert in the last couple of weeks, and everyone's an expert on law enforcement and what tactics are allowed to be used and not to be used. And we all get bogged down in that. When the larger story is, these are not protests in the streets against policies by normal people. There's a certain group of paid protesters we all understand are out there. Foundations and institutions and individuals are funding them, and we all know the names: Tides Foundation, Soros, Singham, go down the list. So some of it's orchestrated and it's a direct attack on civil society. Some of it are people who I think are like this Mr. Preddy, or maybe even Renee Good, who I think are sadly being used. I think they are angry. I think they're being made angry. And I think they are allowing people to use them for their political agendas. So Tim Walz and Mayor Fry and Ilhan Omar have a lot to worry about right now with their fraud scandals and with other things coming up.
Nobody's talking about the fraud scandals because you've had 2 American citizens murdered in broad daylight.
No one's talking about the fraud scandals.
No, really, because
people are paying protesters to go into the streets and create chaos so that nobody will talk about the fraud scandals.
Okay,
and people like Good and like Preddy are being caught up in that net and used as pawns in a game that they shouldn't be used in. And I'm just pleading to everyone, really, I say this out of sincerity, nobody wants to see anybody die. Nobody wants to see this, but we're seeing it because people are setting it up so that it would happen this way. Yeah. And if you're out there and if you hate President Trump and you want illegal aliens to stay in this country, that's your right. Do what the woman who took the video did and stand on the sidewalk and video it going down. And don't interfere and don't put your hands on ICE, because these things will happen. They'll happen again. Tim Walz is not out there with you, right? Ilhan Omar is not sending her family out there to take the risk. She's telling you to do it, and you're being used. And then your death and your injuries are being used to advance their political agendas. No one gets served here except the politicians.
Yeah, for sure. And I think all those points are really well taken. I think on the other hand, it's fair for Americans to ask of their government, like, why is Kristi Noem calling someone a domestic terrorist with no evidence? Why is she saying he came to murder people and shoot people with no evidence? And why is someone who's been disarmed and is surrounded by agents shot 10 times in the back? These are fair questions that are for Americans to ask.
They are fair
when
questions,
their officials are lying to them.
But the answer is already baked into the question by most people on one side or the other, which is my objection here. Everybody's going at this with their bias. Nobody knows what they're talking about online, mostly. Nobody really knows what it's like to be a law enforcement officer who's being attacked in a mob by a guy who, by the way, did it a week or 2 earlier, we now know. Like, these are hot, tense, intense situations. And if you think you're going to engage in one and come out unscathed, you're wrong. And my simple point is, whatever we find out about who was in the right and who was in the wrong here, and my suspicion is that everybody was in the right and everybody was in the wrong who were involved in these shootings. And it's not so cut and dry that there are, villains and innocent people here. There's human beings who got involved in something that they shouldn't have been involved in, and they were put in that situation deliberately by actual evil people who don't care what happens to that ICE agent or to Preddy. They just don't care. They care about what happens to their next election.
It was also a decision to put ICE agents in this posture to, I think they were sent to Minnesota, which no one would say is the epicenter of illegal immigration. Problems in Minnesota are the legal immigration, as we've said with the Somalis, because of the fraud thing. It was like, it was political in nature, is on the other side as well.
They're sent everywhere. They're not. Minnesota's not the only state where there's ICE.
Yeah, but
they've been sent everywhere because we have illegal immigrants all over the country who shouldn't be here.
I think it's fair for I don't know why Kristi Noem still has her job. I think it's fair to say that the government shouldn't lie. They shouldn't lie about what's going on.
If Kristi Noem said the wrong thing about the Second Amendment, everyone's parsing that, and that I really don't care about that. Like, let them work that out. If she ends up losing her job because she deserves to, that's fine with me. that's the details that everyone's getting bogged down in because they don't want to address the main point, which is that ICE does belong in all these communities because we opened our borders for years and sent people all across the country who shouldn't be here, and they need to be removed. And can I just make one other point that I wrote up in a column this week? I think it's a really important point because I have so many friends who are pro-Israel supporters, and they spent the last several years defending the IDF when they went into Gaza with hostile, people all around them and extracting their targets. And there was lots of collateral damage, and there was a lot of defense that's what has to be done. Just hand over Hamas, and this would be over. The same thing applies to ICE agents in these situations. These are people going in to extract targets. They're being attacked, and there's collateral damage, and yet there's no grace for American ICE agents, and there's just endless grace for IDF soldiers. I happen to think they both deserve the grace to say they're not Nazis, they're not hunting people to kill them, and some people are going to die if we keep this up. And
it's not a war. I mean, there's that. I mean, the administration has created a war in Minnesota, but it's not a war.
No, the protesters on the street, the so-called protesters, have created the war, and our administration is responding to it the way any administration would. Those people who are throwing things at ICE and trying to hit them with cars and with their whistles, and who are doxing them, and who set up signal accounts to go and find them. And it's an army. This is a war, and it's well funded. And this is not just a bunch of nice Minnesotans out there going, oh, our neighbors. That's not what this is.
For sure. I just think, again, I think facts matter, right? So we have a federal judge, Patrick Schutz. ICE has likely violated more court orders in January 2026 than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. 100 court orders.
So play that out. So show me, and let's deal with it. But
just to say that, I think it's fair to say that there have to be rules here. And is shooting someone from behind 10 times, does that seem to you like this is what should be happening? You can make a judgment on that. You're an American citizen.
You want my judgment?
You're paying taxes. ICE is being paid,
Yeah, I did the Citizens Police Academy program in New York, where the NYPD takes people once a month for almost a year out to its headquarters in Queens, and they introduce you to all the different department heads and how everything operates. One of the sessions was with a simulator that they use to actually train police officers in New York, and it's this huge screen, and it's different scenarios. You walk in, you're the police officer, and someone's holding someone hostage, or you go up to a homeless person and he pulls a knife on you, and they give you a fake taser, a fake gun, and a fake, and you have to decide in the split second when they turn the video on which weapon to use and what's appropriate based on the rules. And a bunch of us did it, and invariably two things happen. When you respond, almost every time they ask you, how long was that whole episode? And you say 10 minutes, or no, you don't. You say a minute, and it's really 7 seconds. And the second thing is, if you shoot, they say, how many shots did you fire off? And everybody underestimates by a factor of 5. You always think you shot twice because your adrenaline's rushing.
Sure.
Now, amplify that. I'm standing there in a nice, cozy room with a video screen. Now imagine there were real bullets coming at you and real knives. These are human moments. Even with training, things happen. So the point is, don't get yourself into a situation where a member of law enforcement's adrenaline is running through them, and you have a gun and you're attacking them. What else could happen to you? In the list of possibilities of what could happen, one of them must be, I could get hurt.
Yeah.
Right? So, what are you doing there? What are you doing there? Now, let them go figure out, the law enforcement officials, whether he acted appropriately under those circumstances. There's nobody in this room who knows the answer to that, because we're not law enforcement, and I don't really understand what actually happened. If I heard a gun go off and there was a melee like that and I was in the middle of it and I knew the guy had a gun, might I not think that he was shooting at me or one of my fellow officers? Right. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm just saying, can't we understand how this stuff happens, and can't we imagine that it's being set up to happen?
Yeah. I just think if you are serious about, as we are serious about immigration enforcement, this is just not helping, right? I mean, you're seeing this become a huge problem for the administration. I mean, don't take my word for it. Why is Bovino put out to pasture and retired?
Is that a reason to stop it? Meaning, should then the IDF have retreated? Everybody was angry at them.
I don't really buy the comparison.
Why not? Why not?
Because this isn't a war. This is a law enforcement
in
operation.
A sense, if you're in it, it is.
And the only people who've died are American citizens. So who's is this? That's the
Why
framing
does that
I think that
matter?
actually the anti-ICE people want, to say this is a war, this is a civil war, this is Fort Sumter. We're hearing this language. I reject that totally.
No, I think that's exactly what the anti-ICE people want it to be.
They want a war.
They want retreat, which is what the pro-Hamas crowd wanted. You shame those IDF soldiers out of doing their job. You turn this into a moral battle. You're the bad guys. See what you're doing? Even though I'm standing behind human shields, I'm going to make you the bad guy. And we all agreed that's exactly what happened there. But in this case, no, it's something entirely different. To me, it's exactly the same thing.
Again, but you see the reaction. You see Tom Homan saying, hey, things went wrong here. You see the ICE commander who was marching around thrown out.
Yeah, because they did a little deal with walls, and nobody really knows.
It's not a deal with walls. It's the administration is people are outraged, and like, you know, I mean,
I think people's outrage is a narrative that was created for them, and it's political and it's partisan. It's the narrative you're supposed to have if you're on the left, and people like having it, but it's not based on.
You don't have to be on the left. I totally reject
no,
this
you could
idea.
Be Tom Tillis, I guess.
In fact, you should. It's like it's just standing up for the rule of law. And you can stand up, and it's being consistent and standing up for the rule of law.
The rule of law in this country says that you're not allowed to be here illegally, and if you are, ICE can detain you. What about that rule of law?
For sure.
Why isn't Minnesota standing up for that rule of law?
Yeah, but the rule of law also says, you know, you can have a concealed carry permit.
Yes.
And that's not a crime.
No,
he
wasn't shot for having a gun.
Well, we heard from this administration. Heard from this administration that Scott Besson said he brought a gun to a protest.
Yes. That was the wrong thing to say. Everyone's parsed that out. That was the wrong thing to say, but that's the thing that everyone's talking about for the last 2 days, because they don't want to talk about the fact that gun or no gun, that guy shouldn't have been attacking an ICE officer. He shouldn't have been doing it whether he was armed or not. Why can't we all admit that? What was he doing attacking an ICE officer, especially having a gun?
Yeah.
The gun just added a layer to it, but it's not the point, right?
I just think, obstructing.
Like we're at war
which
now.
I love. No, it's good. I mean, I just think, I think obstructing arrest, obstructing up is a crime. 1,000,000%. Arrest people for that. It's not a capital crime. And so whether it's Renee Good or this guy, it's not a capital.
He wasn't murdered.
They were killed.
They were killed because chaos ensued and a terrible tragedy happened. The ICE agent, are you telling me that the ICE agent said, you attacked me, now I have the right to murder you? That's what you're saying a capital crime is.
What do you think happened in that video?
I think that ICE agent was in the middle of chaos.
There were 15. He was on the ground, and there were 15 agents.
He wasn't subdued on the ground.
Him.
He was struggling and fighting back and reaching to his belt. You would have also said, uh-oh, I just heard a shot go off. Where? What is that? And you might have, maybe it was a mistake, but it wasn't murder. He wasn't issuing this judgment that you deserve a capital punishment. That's not what happened here. At best, it was a mistake. At worst, I should say.
Yeah.
Why can't we just, the ICE agent is now a monster? Why didn't he shoot the woman who was taking the shot, the film?
It's not about being a monster or not. I think it's Americans who are broadly supportive. Again, Americans who are broadly supportive of Trump on immigration policy are saying, like, something's happening here that like feels like,
because Americans want these guys out, but they want it to be done in some pretty way that's nice for the cameras. But listen, this is ugly.
Is the art of governance. I mean, I don't. We should hold our government responsible for abiding by the law, and like it's not too much to ask.
I don't buy the argument that we're not holding our government to account. I'm arguing actually that we're holding them to an account. Our high leaders
immediately called this guy a terrorist with no proof. That's crazy.
He attacked an ICE agent. Do you attack ICE agents?
Domestic terrorism has a legal definition. If you saw something going on
the streets right now with a New York City police officer detaining somebody and you felt, no, that person is being unjustly detained, would you jump on the police officer, spit in their face and kick them? Would you do that?
No.
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 Okay. He did.
Like I said, I think this is not, listen, just politically, Trump's approval rating is 35%. I think a lot of people are saying this is not what we voted for.
Okay, I think a lot of people in the United States voted to get illegal immigrants out. He's delivering on that promise. And obviously there's a huge wave of resistance to that promise. And they're making it as ugly and difficult as possible. And allowing them to win would be the worst
I'd love
mistake.
to see some statistics, and I just don't know about how many people who have been arrested in Minnesota are criminals, not criminals. How, is this effective? I guess
DHS says 40. Last I looked, 47 to 52% had a criminal record already, meaning a second crime. Again, let's remember that they've already committed a crime by coming here illegally, and so they are not entitled to be here, period. And they can be detained and thrown out just for that. This narrative that they can only be thrown out if they've also committed murder is like a way of softening the blow.
Right.
But so 47 to 52% was the last number I saw.
Nationwide.
Yeah, nationwide. I didn't see numbers from Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, listen, I think we both can agree that we want this to be, effective policing and effective immigration enforcement. Hopefully Homan coming in will, hopefully sort of put procedures in place that can uphold the law while, seeing fewer incidents like this.
Just one other helpful thing that we could ask our government to do is trace the money here. Like, get Arabella Fund out of the business of stockpiling these people with all the equipment they need to make it as bloodthirsty and nasty as it's become. Yeah. And ask innocent people who just don't agree with these policies, please don't jump on ICE officers. Don't get personally involved until the politicians egging you on lock arms with you and get in there and take the risk themselves. Don't do it on their behalf.
Yep.
Right? That we can agree on.
Yeah, totally.
I think.
Totally. Okay. So Iran, this is funny. I mean,
what's going on?
I really don't know. We spoke with Ray last week, which was just, I thought, a phenomenal briefing on where things were. But I think all three of us sort of were of the opinion of okay, the dust is kind of settling now, and we'll see what happens next, and it's time to maybe analyze what happened. But then, things seem to be heating up again. I mean, Trump is moving military assets into the region. Now says unless Iran agrees to a kind of a nuclear deal, we're going to attack. This is sort of classic Trump of kind of amping up the pressure, amping up the leverage, and he's shown that he'll act, if they don't agree. And so, Iran, we know, likes to draw things out and bullshit and kind of and I don't think that's going to work here. The latest reports I saw just before we came on air were that, Trump is thinking about creating the conditions. This was a CNN report and Reuters for regime change and going through kind of military options to do that. I think the Israelis and elements of the American military say, we're not sure we can do this just through airstrikes, which brings us to, a classic question about intervention and regime change. So, I kind of, the more I learn about the protests, the murder the suppression of the protests, seeing faces of people who've been killed, and, the more I'm convinced that this regime has no right to rule and no right to exist. The devil's in the details about what you do there.
Yeah. I guess I'm as in the dark as you are. Yeah. And so is everybody, because nobody knows what Trump will ever do, and nobody knows what Iran will ever do. Right. So we're dealing with a lot of blind spots here. But I guess, the question for Trump is this red line, as you said, that he set up, and 30-something thousand people, now it's probably more, have been declared killed by the regime. And so Trump set up this red line, and but he has to weigh that red line against his sort of MAGA line, right? They don't want to go in and have boots on the ground and have regime change in another country. So how does he balance those two? I have no idea. He kind of set himself up here by putting a red line out there.
Yeah, we're pretty far out, I think. To walk it back. I mean, at this point, it's always possible, but there seems to be an escalatory logic going on here.
Yeah. And then you have other countries in the region. We talked about this with Ray Takei last week, which was Saudi Arabia and Dubai, obviously, UAE don't want the United States to go in.
Yeah.
And, they are worried about ballistic missiles hitting them. I mean, they're going to hit them. They're not going to hit the United States, although they could hit our bases there. Yeah. Could do a lot of damage. They could destabilize the region. They could send tons of refugees flooding across their borders, which they don't want. Right. There's a lot of actors in the space that the United States has to be aware of too. So, and you probably know as many Persians in New York as I do, and they're all just hoping and praying that the United States just rides in like a white knight and cleans up this mess for them. But I'm not sure, even if we take military action, that would be the outcome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I think that's totally right. I mean, I think fascinatingly right now in D.C., the Saudi Arabian defense minister and I think the Israeli defense brass are both meeting with the American administration officials. It's widely understood that the Israelis want America to strike and the Saudis don't. And so it's a little bit of this like angel and devil on the ear, you know, so to speak, of sort of like of what do you do? I mean, it's very complicated to figure out the relationship between, you know, action, internal reaction. You know, Ray said, and this really struck me, is that like ultimately it's an Iranian issue, and like how do you, you know, but how do you think through that? You know, can you force it? Can you microwave it, you know, so that it happens?
Have enough weapons been funneled in over the years to the Iranian people so they could have a fighting chance? Like
It doesn't seem that way. I mean, they were mowed down in the streets. We all want to see the lion flag flown over Tehran again.
You know, it struck me also, I mean, there's so many episodes of cruelty and horror that you can see online now, unfortunately, to the degree that this stuff even gets out of the country. But there was this 19-year-old influencer called Baby Rider. Have you seen her? That beautiful young blonde woman who rode on motorcycles and let her beautiful hair flow as like a sign of rebellion against the regime, and they shot her and killed her. And you just think, like, if they're willing to do that, obviously, you know, what are they not willing to do?
And these are their future. I mean, you know, you see these young people. I saw another two people singing at a piano, just gorgeous, you know, beautiful people.
Right.
You know, and so I do think there is a moral urgency, but you know, we've done the strikes, we've done this, we've done that. I think it's, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. They've run out of runway.
There's some bigger question also, right? Like that I always struggle with, which is like, how much can America be responsible for doing, right? Like there's Iran, you could name 50 other countries on the planet that need some help.
And would be a lot easier to intervene.
It would be a lot easier, right. Like, so like, how do you decide, and what's worth it, in air quotes, what's in America's interest? Those are really tough questions when you have such passionate feelings about what you're seeing in front of you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, you'd love a situation where the regime capitulates. I mean, but it's hard to see. I mean, last I heard, the supreme leader is in a bunker. I think some of the responsibilities have been passed over to his son. But you know, it's a really entrenched regime. You know, you don't survive for 55 years in the Middle East without being pretty ruthless.
Yes. I mean, that guy is going to live till 100. Is that fair?
Yeah.
That's not fair.
There's no justice. Okay, let's do a quick drive-by New York. We're kind of all digging out from under the snow. Kind of our mayor's first time in the spotlight. I don't know. I guess I thought he did okay vis-a-vis the snow. I mean, it always kind of sucks. It doesn't. I don't know if we can kind of blame him. I mean, famously, snowstorms have like been political disasters for mayors. I'm not sure. You know, this one kind of we trudged through it. But he has these kind of new snazzy jackets he's wearing. If you've been following this, like these Carhartt jackets.
Oh, really?
Like personalized, kind of like, you know, none of these baggy Chris Christie, you know, kind of like windbreakers kind of things. So what are some of your impressions?
I don't know. All of a sudden I miss Eric Adams so much. You know, like you've seen him online sort of outraging against Mamdani and sort of fighting back in ways I didn't see him fight during the campaign.
No, it's true. He's a better mayor not being there.
That's right. Yeah, listen, I think, you know, Mamdani came out and sort of said, we have this huge deficit, right? Which is to say two things. One is, you know, oops, I promised you that everything was going to be free. And obviously now I'm just pointing out that we have this huge deficit, and I'm going to pretend that
he just now realized the deficit.
Like, as if Eric Adams has been talking about it for years.
It's like when I get my credit card bill. I was like, what? Really? I spent that much this month? You know,
That's exactly what it is. And it's a way of setting it up for when he fails to deliver on all his free promises to his constituency. He'll be like, it's Eric Adams' fault. He left me with this impossible deficit. But it's also like conspicuously almost the same amount of money we spend on illegals, according to Eric Adams.
Yeah.
Right? There was something like between a $9 and $12 billion expenditure that Adams was complaining about for years for the city of New York on illegals. And guess what? That's what our deficit is. And so the solution is that you and I should pay for it? No, thank you. And let's just hope Kathy Hochul holds the line.
Yeah, we had an editorial on this that was basically like he's now upping the pressure on Hochul.
Yeah. What do you think she's going to do?
You know, I
so
think
far she said she's not doing it.
She's not doing it. Yeah, I mean, she's a pretty canny operator, not a person of principle. Yeah. Forgive me, Kathy, but like, you know, she's a Pole. I don't know. I think it all is just going to be on like the leverage. I really think like if she, you know, if she feels like she can stand up, she will. If she doesn't, I don't know the kind of like Albany politics behind
Depends on her primary, right? How much she thinks she's in danger
I think that's right.
of being primaried from the left. And then that'll depend on how much she has to give to Mamdani.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think she's, you know, kind of like swung behind him on the child care issue. But, you know, maybe this is a place to kind of like put some distance. I don't know. I don't think it'll be basically I don't think it'll be driven by principle either way. You know, like no, I really don't. But you know, what do you think? I mean, you know,
I don't know. Like half my friends have already left New York.
Right.
I feel like I'm the last of the Mohegans here. Like if this happens, you know, it'll be you and me.
Yeah,
we'll have to go out to dinner every night because there'll be no one left.
That'd be great. Yeah, but. Yeah, I mean, I think
I love that you saw that as a positive.
Right. Obviously, what Mamdani wants is higher taxes, and more taxes to pay for more programs.
I mean, just on some basic level, can we all just acknowledge that the absurdity of this? That you know, we're $10 billion in the hole, roughly 8, 12, whatever the number is, and our mayor's first instinct is like, let's get more to fill in that hole. Not let's pause everything, do a full audit, and cut all the stuff that we know is sitting there that we shouldn't be spending money on. And maybe, guess what? We might even have more money than we need.
Well, as you pointed out with your point about the budget, you know, I actually think $10 billion is sort of doable. Like if you cut. Meaning, like, I'm sure there's plenty of fat in the city budget in different places.
Maybe Scott Bessent will come in and do that job.
It's
not going to be Mamdani.
Right. But, you know, when you start to say things like, okay, like we also want, you know, free buses and we want all this stuff, like it's, you know, obviously that's going to add, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right. I mean, I'd like a fleet of private planes to wait for me wherever I go to take wherever I want, but like it's not in my budget, so I'm not going to do it. Right. Like he has no sense of his wish list versus reality.
Yeah.
He just thinks if you set out a wish list and you frame it as equity and fair and empathetic, then rich people should pay for it.
Yeah.
Never mind that where's the money that like Bill de Blasio's wife ran off with? Like, let's find that. What was that? $1.5 billion, $2 billion? Find that first before you tax anybody else. How about that?
Yeah. No, totally. By the way, Dante de Blasio arrested in an anti-ICE protest. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I doubt he's sitting in a jail cell.
Yeah. No, totally. I think all that. I think all that is right. You know, there's plenty of to do. That's just like basic upkeep services. I don't know if any of my friends have been to the JFK air train stop lately. Ooh. If you have, it's amazing you got out. So you know. But
have you been to the Greyhound bus station ever?
Oh
I was
gosh.
there last year.
I'm suppressing that trauma. Okay, so let's scoot ahead to our sunlights. Maybe I'll go just because it's sort of connected to this, and not a point to kind of, you know, I don't want to kvetch about it too much, but you know, this ramming attack on the Chabad headquarters at 770. You know, I know everyone's tired of hearing about anti-Semitism, but I think the point is just worth making that actually the Jews who face the highest risk of anti-Semitism are people who look Jewish and who are visible Jews, not necessarily all the time someone like me. So
you look Jewish.
I look Jewish, but you know, it's you know, the black hats and the people, you know, and I think it's worth listening to what they have to say. It's worth listening to their experience, where a threat's coming to them. You know, I think the test of our mettle as a METTLE, as a melting pot and as a diverse and tolerant city is not how do we treat, you know, the people who don't need, but the people who you know, are different and look different. And like, I would just say that, like, you know, these are people who, you know, they're not heroes. They're dressing and how they think God wants them to or their community wants it, but they're taking a risk every day. And I see it when, someone on the subway is, has a long black coat and a black hat and payas, or even wearing a yarmulke. Like they're visible and vulnerable in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And so just to acknowledge that and say they're a part of the fabric of our cities just as much as anyone else. And that I hope this kind of attack is prosecuted fully. And that, there should be protection at 770. I don't know if there is or isn't, but there should be. And we shouldn't be afraid to name them.
I'm pretty sure that I just read that police protection was scaled back in
Really?
recent weeks at 770. And
Yeah.
Mamdani went there, of course, and said this is unacceptable. Of course, he also said that globalized intifada is not something he would stand against. So now he's getting what he wanted. Okay, my sunlight just has to do with the winter storm that we just endured. There are a lot of people who don't have power, but that was mostly because power lines went down or things froze over. But the actual national grid, delivered. And I think it's really important to just take a minute to talk about energy in this country and what the Trump administration has done. Because in moments like this, energy matters to people in ways that you don't think about when you're not trying to get your heater up past 68 degrees. So it's just, I want to point out that what got us through this storm was largely the energy that was produced from fossil fuels, the sort of evil fossil fuels that the green movement has been trying to cut off for years now. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, fossil fuels accounted for about 70 to 80% of the reliable baseload and peaking power during the storm. And solar and wind, they're different numbers. Some say less than 3%. Chris Wright just said that, I think, and some say less than 7%. Whatever it was, if we had been relying on renewables and green energy just to keep us from freezing to death over the last week, we would have all been frostbitten. So it's worth reconsidering whether we want to continue this war against oil and natural gas, or if we want to lean into what the Trump administration has done, which is promoting more of it, unless or until we can find substitutes that are going to be reliable. But for now, we need our fossil fuels.
Yeah, well said. And I think just to hop on that, one tragic thing from this snowstorm, I just saw it reported that some 10 people died from being outside, and it's worth asking about. Mamdani and others have pushed this policy against involuntary confinement and allowing, and so what's cruel and what's kind is a complicated question.
That's a good point.
We talked about the building insane asylums last week, but providing shelter for people. So I guess my sunburn is all of these kind of like awful like Holocaust like comments like from it was International Holocaust Memorial Day, and it's Tim Waltz saying like Anne Frank is here in Minnesota. That was really disgusting. I think Stephen Colbert said the only difference between Nazis and ICE agents was that one of them wore masks. Beyond disgusting. And I have to say I really thought it was like really crazy that sort of on the other side of the aisle that J.D. Vance's tweet about the Holocaust didn't mention Jews and didn't mention Nazis. So it's just baffling to me. So I think it feels like our understanding of the Holocaust is being dumbed down. It's being used for political purposes. It's not that hard to have a short, strong, normal statement that doesn't universalize, that doesn't relativize, that doesn't score cheap political points. It's not about policing people's language. It's just sort of like, it's not too much to ask that the Holocaust be remembered in a way that's more or less accurate, more or less remembers what it's about.
Yeah. It might be too much to ask.
Right, maybe.
My sunburn this week, TikTok changed hands from Chinese ownership to Larry Ellison, who's the founder of Oracle and a major Trump supporter. And a lot of people have been saying that there's rampant censorship going on, shadow banning. Singer Billie Eilish came out and pointed to her brother's account and said that it got far fewer views than ever before when he was opposing ICE. And there's this idea that the right is now in charge and they're censoring speech on the left. And I tend to agree. Actually, I think that they're not wrong to point this out. What they're wrong about is, astonishingly, they never seem to see it when it was owned by the Chinese, that opinions on the right and opinions about Israel were all being censored and diminished, and there was shadow banning and people were not being promoted. So I don't think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'd prefer that neither were happening. But I don't think it's right for people on the right now to say, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not happening. It is happening. And this back and forth, this ping pong of censorship is bad for everyone. It's bad for the country. And wouldn't it be nice if Billie Eilish had just spoken out against censorship a few years ago? And then I'd listen to her more when she was speaking out against it now.
Yeah, well said. Okay, stay warm.
You too.
Bye.